Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard.
And this is Boom Bust, broadcasting around the world and covering the world of business and finance and the impact on us all. I'm Ben Swan, filling in for Bart Chilton in Washington. Glad you're with us. So coming up, a swine flu outbreak has devastated China's pork market. But what does that mean for the market? More importantly, what does it mean for you? Fred Kaufman, the author of Bet the Farm, and Todd Horwitz of Bubba Trading, they join us to break down what this all means for pork. Plus, we made through what the outbreak means for pork stocks across the globe, and then we break down some other big news in the tech and health sectors with Danielle Shay. She's the Director of Operations over at Simpler Trading. And once again, Facebook is under fire, this time on the other side of the globe, as the social media giant's role in the Indian election is now coming under scrutiny. Conservative TV and radio commentator Steve Malzberg and RT producer Brent Jabbour dive into the details and tell us what this means for the world's largest democracy. All that straight ahead. But first, let's do some headlines. Let's start here. A dimming outlook for a fracturing world market in 2019. So the World Trade Organization significantly downgrades their regular forecast on growth in global trade. The WTO's latest trade and statistics outlook, it lowers their expectations for global trade growth this year, predicting 2.6% growth for 2019. That's down from the previous forecast of 3.7%. In a statement, WTO Director General Roberto Acevedo, he cited familiar international trade tensions for the revision. And by the same token, the WTO said a prompt resolution of those fights could remove that downgrade pressure on trade growth. The WTO also had some retrospective bad news, cutting their estimate for global trade growth for last year to an even 3%. That's down from 3.9%. More fallout from Tuesday's decision to buy an S-400 missile defense system from Russia, which we reported earlier. Well, now the U.S. Department of Defense, the DoD, has canceled the delivery of equipment needed to operate F-35 fighter jets made by Lockheed Martin. Through a spokesperson, the department said this, quote, pending an unequivocal Turkish decision to forego delivery of the S-400, deliveries and activities associated with the stand-up of Turkey's F-35 operational capability have been suspended. Reuters reports that the DoD is trying to sell Turkish defense officials on a Patriot anti-missile system made by Raytheon as a substitute for the S-400. Well, meanwhile, the Turkish foreign minister is expected to attend a NATO summit in Washington this week, perhaps making for some interesting discussions there, especially in the wake of notable election setbacks for the Turkish president and his long-ruling Justice and Development Party in elections this past weekend. Well, China looks to be about to vastly increase purchases of American pork. Imports may rise as high as 300,000 metric tons of pork in 2019. That would be an 81% increase over the 166,000 tons imported in 2017. Truthfully, though, that number could really be much higher, depending on the toll that African swine flu ultimately takes on China's pork industry. Joining me now to discuss is Todd Horwitz, the chief strategist with Bubba Trading, and Fred Kaufman, author of Bet the Farm. Gentlemen, glad that you're with me. Fred, let's start with you. African swine fever so far, about 1 million pigs have been selectively slaughtered in China in an attempt to stop the spread of swine flu. How difficult is it to get a pandemic like this under control?
Well, Ben, it's a hell of a start to the year of the pig, isn't it? It is very hard to get something like this under control. The Chinese just last month reported 115 cases of the outbreak of the flu. And there's a big problem in terms of the globalization of and the movement of food. And so, of course, there are Chinese imports coming here. We've got the sniffer beagles at the border, very aware, because once one pig in a herd gets swine flu, the entire herd must be, as they euphemistically say, culled, that is, killed. And again, in an underreport from China, they've already had to cull more than 600,000 pigs. This is a big deal, but of course it offers an opportunity for those who want to make money. It's been quite a run for lean pork futures this past month. We haven't seen anything like it since 1973.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers would remember 2009, 2010, when there was a swine flu pandemic here in the U.S. How does what happened here in the U.S. almost, 10 years ago, compare to the outbreak that China's facing right now?
Well, I think that it's really no comparison. We are looking at something rather large and devastating in China, and the numbers are mind-boggling. I mean, what we're hearing from a number of sources is that China is going to have to import more than 200,000 metric tons of pork to make up for their demand. And of course, that is sending the futures spiraling upwards. The strange thing here is we have this bizarre asymmetry in the markets, because at the same time, we are seeing the hog feed the soybeans in the doldrum. And what we're looking at are all these externals due to the trade war that's been begun by the Trump administration, which is really throwing these markets out of whack.
Yeah, absolutely. Todd, you know, with that in mind, the U.S. obviously looking at supplying a huge amount of pork to the Chinese. Already, as you heard there, something like 200,000 metric tons expected to be provided by the U.S. And that's just the first half of this year. And some are calling even that estimate pretty conservative. What say you?
Well, Bart, thanks for having me on. I think that, again, I think that that's overstating the obvious. I mean, you can see hog futures, yes, they're up 42% in the last 6 weeks. However, if you go back to the PED virus of a number of years ago, back around 2011 or 12, hogs are trading at $1.33. They're trading at 92 cents right now. So at the end of the day, again, the markets are very efficient in pricing in what they're going to need. And hogs, of course, can recreate very quickly. They're one of the quickest species to recreate themselves. So it'll get under control. The markets are not in a state of panic whatsoever or what's going on here. We've had a couple limit up days, but if you take a look at the overall market picture, the hogs have been under control and had one big rally that took us up. And here we are, settled around the 90 cents to 95 cents. I think that's telling you right there that it is not a major panic and that there's nothing to really be worried about right now. Again, we go back to the PED virus, we were as high as $1.33.
So you're making the point then that where we stand right now isn't actually as high as what maybe some people would expect it to be. I mean, when we talk about hog futures being up or even being way up, maybe not as high as they should be? And what's it going to take to get them there?
Well, again, if there's going to be a real panic and there's going to be an unbelievable demand for hogs, then these prices are not even close to where they're going to go. I mean, we've got another 50% higher that we can go. But again, based on information, based on what's out there, the markets are telling you that this is probably pretty much towards the upper end. We know that how much they may have to import. We know what they're going to have to do. But here we are at the price. And the price, one thing you know you can't argue with is you being the ex-chairman. No, you can't argue with price.
Can't argue with price. Fred, you know, the mention here about how quickly pigs replenish themselves, I guess, is for lack of a better term. I mean, how long does it take to get something like this under control and to completely move out a swine flu pandemic? I mean, we know that in 2009, as I mentioned, it took all the way to the end of 2010 really to see it kind of come under control here in the U.S. How long do you think it'll take this time?
It's hard to tell because of the externalities. I mean, what's different today is that we no longer have a most favored nation status in terms of import and export. It used to be the tariffs were 12%. Now import tariffs on U.S. pork to China are at 62%. And it's because of that that's going to have a tempering effect on the price. As we've just seen, Brazil is really eating our cake. Brazil is the one that's really benefiting from their export to China at this point. So because it's a very different situation because of this monkey wrench that's been thrown into the situation with the tariffs, both in the soybean market, in the protein market, and across the board internationally. So it's going to be hard to tell.
And Todd, what to that point? I mean, I saw you shaking your head no here in the split box. So at this point, do you feel that that's not the case?
Markets are very efficient in pricing, and yes, right now Brazil is benefiting from what's going on. But at the end of the day, the real problem here is that we've got oversupplies right now. So that's why we can't get prices. We can talk about tariffs, we can say it's because of tariffs, but the bottom line is we've had 3 years of bumper-to-bumper soybean crops where there's no place to go. So you can blame it on whatever you want. Let's get a weather event, and I assure you that there will be no more oversupply of soybeans. And again, right now we've had perfect conditions, and they continue to bring more crops to market. So between all of this, it's got nothing to do with the tariffs is why prices are low. Prices are actually higher today than when the tariffs first started. So again, it comes back to a supply and demand model, and right now we got plenty of supply, so it's not forcing a shortage or prices to rise.
All right, Todd Horwitz of Bubba Trading, Fred Kaufman, author. Appreciate both of you, even though you don't always agree. That's what makes for an interesting conversation. Thank you both.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well, I told you it was about to happen, and sure enough, Bitcoin saw a huge price spike overnight, at one point jumping above the $4,800 mark. It's the first time that has happened in over 4 months. How about that? Now, it's come down just a little bit since then, but finishing the day up 14%. And the other good news here, it brought all the other altcoins with it. Ethereum, Dash, Litecoin, everybody's up double digits. But if you want to see something beautiful, take a look at this chart showing the price of Bitcoin over the last 7 days. A huge jump from just 24 hours ago and sitting almost $1,000 above where it was just a week ago. And now no one seems to be quite sure why this is happening, but maybe, just maybe, Bitcoin bulls are finally waking up. Fingers crossed. Time now for a quick break, but hang in there because when we return, we continue to analyze what the swine flu outbreak means for stocks. And we break down some of the other big news in the tech and health sectors with Danielle Shay, the Director of Operations over at Simpler Trading. And once again, Facebook back under fire, this time on the other side of the globe, as the social media giant's role in the Indian election is coming under scrutiny. Conservative TV and radio commentator Steve Malzberg and RT producer Brent Jabor delve into the details and tell us what this means for the world's largest democracy. And as we go to break, here are the numbers at the closing bell.
They're bred for a single purpose. They have a superpower. They start training very young. 8 months of intensive schooling. They're rats, and they save lives.
What politicians do is something we don't do. They put themselves on the line, and they get accepted or rejected. So when you want to be president, why would you want to be? Why would someone want to be president? What's it like to be president? What's it like when the phone rings at 3 in the morning? Can't be a good call. I'm interested always in the whys and the hows.
And Q Larry.
Question more.
I think Mark Dugan is an outstanding person because he took on the most powerful agency in this county, arguably the state.
If you look at it from a biblical analogy, Mark was the David, and he was fighting the Goliath.
Mark Dugan has been the sheriff's most contentious critic for years.
The first time I noticed something wasn't right in police work was pretty much when I first started.
The corruption in Palm Beach County is not something that you can smell or touch or anything like that. It's a nod and a wink.
It wasn't what I wanted to do.
We've had more unarmed shootings in this county than some states have had collectively.
Dugan went too far. His website began featuring nasty comments about Gauga's family, the sheriff's right-hand man.
They're going to squash you like a bug. You know, I wish you'd stop. And then he said, Dad, I'm not going to stop. I believe in what I'm doing. And I was like, okay, you know, it's your funeral, buddy.
FBI raided PBSO critic Mark Dugan's house.
I snuck out of the United States into Russia, where I obtained political asylum. A man they know as Bad Wolf.
Welcome back. We're taking a look at some of the stocks that are doing well and some not so well. Joining me now to break it all down for you is Danielle Shay, the Director of Options for Simpler Trading. Danielle, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
I know you got to listen into the last segment breaking down the swine flu pandemic in China, and we had some disagreement there. So let's start our discussion here following up with that. A look at China's WH Group. They announced their fourth quarter net profit fell 7% to $290 million. WH Group owns U.S.-based Smithfield Foods, and they're reporting that the average pork prices in the U.S. dropped 9% in 2018 due to higher supplies from an expanding slaughter sector. So how does this China swine flu affect the overall outlook for that company, not just here in the States, but abroad as well?
So first of all, when looking at this company, I would also say that one of the biggest impacts has been the trade wars. I mean, we cannot deny that. And so first of all, you have trade wars impacting pork products. And then on top of that, you have the swine flu. So while primarily in the beginning, there was an oversupply problem, now the swine flu problem has it will actually help the stock price because now we're not going to have that oversupply. So I think that it's going to eventually send those stock prices higher.
Okay, let's switch gears just a little bit because in case people are tired of talking about pork, let's talk about Amazon here because it's announced that it's now slashing prices again at Whole Foods, and that's lowering prices. At Whole Foods, they did this, in 2017 when they first took over, Amazon did. This is now the third time that Amazon has discounted items there. Are these price drops actually helpful to customers, or is this actually more of a marketing tactic in the end?
Well, I think it's both, actually. Amazon and Jeff Bezos, I mean, they are going to take over the world. Amazon did it initially with the Prime subscription. Their entire goal here is getting customers into that customer base, into that ecosystem. And Amazon has proven that people who are Prime members spend far more on Amazon.com than people who aren't.
Yeah.
So now what they're doing is they're taking their base and they're pushing them into Whole Foods, lowering the prices, targeting millennials and their huge subscriber list. And I think it's going to be great for Amazon and for Whole Foods.
It's an interesting concept. I don't know if you have if you're a Prime member, if you have the Prime app specifically for it. Do you? Okay, so I do too.
Oh, I'm a Prime member and I order everything on Amazon, and now I definitely want to start going to Whole Foods now that it's cheaper.
Well, right, and so I've been an Amazon Prime member for a while, and I've gone to Whole Foods, and then they tell you when you get to the register, to use your little app specifically for Whole Foods to get your discounts. And I got to tell you, it never saves money. It saves like $2, and at the end of the day, and Whole Foods is so expensive as it is. It feels to me like there is a gap there between saving as a Prime member compared to what you get on Amazon. Because on Amazon, they make you feel like being a Prime member is actually worth something. Does that need to be worked on, or is it just me?
I personally haven't tried it yet, but what I think it is I think it's the long game, and I think the more and more that they can publicize that they're cutting prices even further, I think that in the long run, it should help members feel that it's a huge benefit, and it should actually push them to the store.
Yeah, well, not such good news for Walgreens. We'll shift gears again because that company missed forecasts. Yes. They've now lowered forecasts for the rest of 2019, and the CEO called Q1 of this year, he called it the most difficult quarter since acquiring that European drugstore chain Alliance Boots back in 2014. We have a chart there that shows the drop-off. It looks like a diving board. How does Walgreens improve performance moving forward if this is the case?
So looking at Walgreens and the performance there, I mean, a lot of this was caused by the margins on their generic drugs. And I would also say that they need to work on pushing additional products and partnerships. One of them that they have mentioned is a partnership with Microsoft. And they've also talked about putting CBD products in their store, which I think that could be huge as far as bringing in a younger customer base that would then spend more money within the store.
Get CBD in there. It fixes everything. Danielle Shay, the Director of Options at Simpler Trading. Thanks for your time. Well, catching up with the Brexit events that we previewed yesterday, a day of voting in the British House of Commons on 4 Brexit options. It didn't really do anything to clarify the situation. While none of the 4 options received majority support from the Commons, the option that lost by the smallest margin, it was a proposal for a post-Brexit customs union with Europe from MP Ken Clark of the ruling Conservative Party. So that option went down very narrowly on a vote of 273 for to 276 against. After a 7-hour cabinet meeting earlier today, Prime Minister Theresa May pledged to, quote, break the logjam and press for a short extension of the Brexit deadline past the current April 12th deadline, pushing it out to May 22nd. The Prime Minister also invited opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party to work with her to craft an agreement. Brexit Select Committee and MP Hilary Benn of Labour reportedly replied this, quote, after 2 3/4 years, she now said that she wants to reach out. But we've been here before, end quote. Well, moves by Apple and Chinese tax officials have effectively lowered the price of iPhones listed on the official Chinese online store by 6%. A reduction in the value-added tax, or a VAT tax, paid by manufacturers from 16% to 13% took effect on Monday, April 1st. And it was no joke. Apple then directly lowered prices for their most recent 7, 8, and X models between 3 and 500 yuan. The price of Apple's flagship product is under some significant pressure as Chinese growth and demand for pricey phones seems to flag, and more affordable competing goods from makers including Huawei enter a market of consumers that seem increasingly immune to Apple's once decisive advantages on design and ease of use. Meanwhile, the Trump administration's trade fights are threatening to snap Apple's globalized supply chain, creating uncertainty and pushing up prices of inputs. An op-ed by Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg is raising eyebrows. The social media giant's founder claims that there needs to be more control over social networks from governments around the world. Zuckerberg called for 4 different policy areas that governments should focus on: harmful content, election integrity, privacy, and data portability. What Zuckerberg did not call for, predictably, breaking up giant tech companies. And that might make sense. Joining me now to discuss Facebook's future and its role in the Indian elections, conservative commentator Steve Malzberg and RT producer Brent Jabbour. Guys, thanks for being here. Thank you. So, Steve, I'll start with you. You know, Zuckerberg sounds pretty self-serving, I got to tell you. He's calling for greater regulation because it sounds like what he's really saying is this: it's easier to regulate one giant company like Facebook than to control lots of smaller companies. And that kind of sounds like the poster child for cronyism, does it not?
Yeah, it kind of does. And I'm not surprised, but your key phrase there was self-serving in so many ways. Because this man, you know, the call is out there to break up the big tech companies by someone like Elizabeth Warren, which we discussed on the show on Friday here on Boom Bust. But Facebook always seems to grab the headlines and be in the most trouble. There's a HUD lawsuit against them for last week for discriminatory practices in their housing advertising. There's investigations by the FTC here, the SEC, the FBI, and reports of a grand jury that's convened in New York's Eastern District looking into data sharing. So you got overseas problems for them. A data protection commission in Ireland says that 10 of the 15 ongoing investigations involve data usage by Facebook, Instagram, or their WhatsApp. It's all over the world. They're in the spotlight. So he's self-serving. As you said, it leads to cronyism if they could stay together. But also, it's trying to preempt and show, hey, I'm being a good boy here. Don't punish me anymore. Stop investigating me.
Yeah, stop punishing me, and let's get rid of all the competition, and I'll behave. You know, Brent, Zuckerberg's most self-serving claim here, and he had a lot of them, was when he called for regulations regarding data portability. He said this, quote, "If you share data with one service, you should be able to move it to another. This gives people choice. It enables developers to innovate and to compete." Now, we know Mark Zuckerberg does not want anybody innovating or competing with him. But it sounds like what he's actually saying here is that he wants data portability. In reality, Facebook owns nearly all social media platforms, major ones, Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp. So how would this, if at all, actually help any consumer?
Well, the short answer is it really doesn't help the consumer. In the op-ed, Zuckerberg mentioned the way that you use Facebook to sign into other services. So, you know, sometimes you'll open an app and it'll say create an account or sign in with Facebook. That's kind of what he's talking about a little bit there. So he's sharing data, basically the data that Facebook has, and sharing it with other services. He's also talking about sharing it throughout platforms, which is very easy when it comes to Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram. They're fully integrated. When you show content, it really displays well, which can be very helpful. And what they're all trying to do is drive traffic back to Facebook, which actually is making a profit. They're not seeing as big of a profit. I mean, there's no monetization really on WhatsApp or on Messenger. But try sharing a tweet on Facebook. It gets mangled, and that's why you tend to see like a lot of people do screenshots of tweets rather than actually just sharing the post. It also appears as he's also saying, we want to share your data in a beneficial way to the consumer, but also we want to share your data in a beneficial way to Facebook.
Yeah, he also doesn't say, let's stop collecting the data,
of
right?
Course.
Which is what he keeps getting in trouble for. So let's talk about, Brent, also Facebook's numbers. So for all the trouble they get into and have been getting into, those numbers came out in 2018, and the company's doing very well. In fact, the full results for 2018 show total revenue and profit reaching record levels. We're talking about a company posting a 30% jump in profits. Why is Facebook doing so well in spite of all the scandals they've faced in the last year?
I think it's a lot about demographics. Those in the younger generation, we tend to look at Facebook. I don't want to say we, but people looking at Facebook as the old people's social network, with users under the age of 30 preferring Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. But the big money demographics, those within the 30 to 64 age range, are more active on Facebook. And Facebook users also tend to have more disposable income, again, likely due to that large age gap. So while Instagram and Twitter, they do run sponsored ads, you can see that they are intended for a younger audience. Is things that really fit their brand. You know, you'll sometimes see sunglasses or beachwear as they advertise it. But take a look at the ads you see on Facebook. They're for furniture stores, mattress companies, high-dollar products that their users are actually more likely to use and buy. And when it comes to the web, it's all about clicks.
All about clicks. All right, so Facebook has kind of run off a lot of their audience. That's what they've been doing. And in part, it's part of their election integrity efforts, right? So, Steve, you know, Monday, Facebook announced that it removed over 1,100 pages, groups, and accounts that it claims it flagged for, quote, I love this term, coordinated inauthentic behavior. So how do these decisions by Facebook protect the integrity of elections? This is all happening in India right now because Facebook's trying to save the Indian elections, right? The thing is this, if Facebook is controlling who's allowed to spread messages during an election, isn't Facebook itself affecting the outcome of the election?
I couldn't agree with you more, especially in a country like India with 300 million users, and Facebook is a big political tool, probably a lot bigger than here in the United States. And they make the decisions, just like they decide here who's going to get banned, who's going to be able to stay, who's going to be deemed to be hate speech and hateful. But to an extent, I'm taking their side for a second, they've instituted ways of identifying the people who post these ads. Many of the removed ads in India's election, for instance, supposedly are linked to India's opposition Congress and some to the Pakistani military, and then they falsely, you know, they portray themselves as somebody else. So at least they're taking steps, they say, and we have to go on their word, to identify these people who are lying and pull the ads out. And, you know, if it's going to work, I don't know. But you're right. When they're in charge of the candy store, they get to decide what's on the candy store shelves.
So we have to do this quick. We've got about 30 seconds left, but 2020 is on its way, the election. Facebook is going to claim, you know, that how they've been protecting in India, they want to protect here as well. Here's the thing. You were describing some of the actions by these accounts, but isn't this the same thing that a political action committee does? I mean, bottom line, they make claims and then someone needs to fact check it, but are they going to all get pulled down, or are only the big money people going to survive?
No. Right, no, but at least the PACs, you know who they are. They tell you who the PACs are. Facebook has put this full disclosure rules in effect, and they're going to identify every ad. You're going to click on a paid-for icon. It's going to tell you who did it, how much they paid, the demographic of who's seeing the ad, which right now anybody could just say they're this person and you don't know. So that's what they're fixing, not the message.
All right. Conservative commentator Steve Malzberg, RT producer Brent Jabor. Guys, thanks for your insight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for us this time. You can catch Boom Bust on DirecTV, channel 321, Dish Network, channel 280, or streaming 24/7 on Pluto TV, the free TV app, channel 132. Or, as always, hit us up at youtube.com/BoomBustRT. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.